Welcome to Media Makers Spotlight from women in film and video in Washington, D.C. We bring you conversations with industry professionals for behind the screens, insight, and inspiration.
Welcome to Media Maker Spotlight. I'm your host for this episode, Tara Jabbari, and our guest is visual effects producer Leah Orsini, who has over 20 years of experience and has contributed to a diverse array of acclaimed productions, including notable TV shows such as The Gilded Age, The Loudest Voice, Blindspot, Mr. Robot, and she was Emmy nominated for her work for Falling Skies, plus films like Split. Thanks for coming on, Leah.
Thank you for having me.
So first, can you dumb it down and tell us what it entails to be a visual effects producer?
Sure. There's actually kind of two different types of VFX producers. VFX producers on the facility side, which are the companies a lot of time that execute the visual effects. And then there are visual effects producers on the show side, which is currently what I do. Basically, show side VFX producers are hired directly by the production or the studio to manage the visual effects with the visual effects supervisor and potentially a small team with them. Usually that happens with like shows that have a lot of visual effects within them. And it's, a bit more than, the post team can take on. And it's also beneficial because the visual effects producer and the visual effects supervisor can better advise as to how to shoot the visual effects, how to, with the budget and everything, how to be efficient in order to save money and obviously make everything look great. And then the visual effects producers on the facility side would still be involved in a show, for instance, one that I would do because I would work we would hire the visual effects facility of our, choice. Typically, there are several facilities that we like to work with, and they would take our direction or the visual effects supervisor's creative direction and, work with me on the budget and the logistics to basically get the work done.
Okay, got it. I'm curious, because we kind of discussed this when we were talking about it. Like you think of so Blindspot or Warrior, you think of, lots of visual effects. But then you think of The Gilded Age, not so much. And you're like, you would think that. And kind of stuff like that. So what are some things there's quite a lot that goes in with visual effects in all the different types of things, because you have all this wide variety. So you have all the little superhero stuff or action things, and then you have these time periods, and then, or like Mr. Robot, which is just modern day and, everyday kind of happenings. What are some things that you think people don't realize are visual effects?
Yeah. So a lot of the projects that I work on now, and I guess a lot of them in the past too, are, of the, I guess we call it invisible visual effects. I really enjoy it because the task of making it look like it's not a visual effect is difficult and, has been for a while. And, the technology is advancing and, most people wouldn't notice, but we critique it quite often. But actually, Gilded Age is a whole lot more visual effects than something like Mr. Robot. Blindspot was a lot, but for example, I said the bigger visual effects shows have a show side VFX producer and a VFX supervisor, which was our team on The Gilded Age, and Mr. Robot and Blindspot were more of the direct to vendor or direct to the facility show. So smaller shows where the post team can handle managing the visual effects with the showrunner and everything go direct to the facility. And so when I worked on the facility side, that's when I did those two shows. And so, Blindspot is, a lot of muzzle flashes and blood and, I think there was some explosions. It's been a while since I worked on that show, those type of things and cleanup and, production cleanup and stuff like that. Whereas the Gilded Age is in the, 1880s period. So we have to make everything look that, that time period. And so we worked a lot with art department and stuff to make sure that anything, if we were shooting at a practical location, for example, storm windows aren't of the 1880s period. So we would have to clean that up and make them look like they were not storm windows in like a building or something like that. Removing door buzzers and, anything that looks modern on the street that we weren't able to remove practically. But then in addition to that, things like set extensions, we had a full back lot where we built the first level of a block, like a city block of New York. And so all of that was practical, and then visual effects extended up and back in CG.
Yeah. Got it. And could you kind of explain the difference between visual effects and special effects?
So special effects is practical effects. So an explosion that you would maybe do on set practically, or fireworks that you would shoot practically. But even anything that is like water running that isn't typically there, or some like water running in a faucet, they bring special effects in for. Any kind of smoke or atmosphere is their department. And then visual effects is all done in post in the computer.
Okay, got it. Okay. How did you get your start in visual effects?
So I originally started in production. I did an internship in New York and then moved back to Texas, where I'm from, stayed in production for a while, and then moved and took a post-production job at a company called Real Effects in Texas. And in doing that, I just kind of got a taste of visual effects, and it really interested me as far as like the technology and, learning something new about it and it advancing so quickly, and being able to kind of, create something from nothing in the computer. And so I kind of wanted to focus more on that and really kind of concentrate on that aspect of it. And I really wanted to move. I was in commercials at the time, so I really wanted to move into TV or features. So I just kind of applied for a bunch of jobs and ended up getting it. I also wanted to leave Texas. So I got a job in LA and moved there. And then my now husband got a job in New York. And so I was in LA for about a year, and then we both moved to New York. So.
And that was one thing that I was wondering with visual effects and arts and even special effects and stuff. And you mentioned it, that the technology that has changed over the last 20 years, and even that it drew you when you're working in production. What has changed the most, and what do you see progressing in it technology-wise that makes your job possibly easier? What do you think will help? What makes you scared that's like, oh, that's going to take my job away, kind of thing?
Well, it's constantly changed in that the software's gotten faster. Everything has just gotten faster, that we can do stuff quicker. I don't actually execute the visual effects. I, basically manage the whole, like almost like a project manager, the whole thing as far as budget and shots go, and overlap a bit with the visual effects supervisor. But I feel like, since I started in TV, in visual effects, what was it, 12 years ago, or 13 years ago, everything is, moving much faster. We can do a lot of stuff really quickly. Whereas then, lots of things took a lot more, it was still fast, but, constantly getting faster, but now it's speeding up as far as, render capabilities, and even things like automating our process for IO, as far as like receiving and sending plates, and, just the amount of data that has to be transferred back and forth from the DI house to us and to the vendors, and back. It's all just gotten a lot faster. And it's also just gotten better as far as being able to, more tools, more plugins that make things look better. And then, the talent is great too. That's what makes everything look great is the artists that work on it and the visual effects supervisor that is, guiding them to, create his vision.
What are other departments then that you work closely with?
I'd say we work the most with art department. Our worlds kind of merge together quite a bit, especially in something like a period show, like the Gilded Age, because we're always matching into what they're doing practically. Or if it's something that is not there, the production designer usually is working with the visual effects supervisor on the vision of, what this should look like period wise. And obviously, the directors and showrunners, but the production designer always has that research and knowledge on what is within that time period and what would not be there. So I'd say they're the biggest overlap for sure. Special effects too, depending on the show. A lot of work with our department for sure.
Yeah. And what do you recommend for people interested in visual effects and like wanting to get into this field?
I mean, on the production end, as far as VFX coordinating or VFX producing goes, I didn't go to school or anything for visual effects. I was a broadcast journalism major. I just kind of got into it because I knew that I wanted to work in the film industry, and then it ended up happening that I was interested in it. I started as a PA, but as far as, visual effects artists, visual effects supervisors, that most people go to school for it, like to a visual arts school. Not everybody does. And then they just, pick up a nuke license or, start, have a good eye for color and lighting and composition. And so they, just start practicing or get lucky and get an internship and somebody that can, has a program to teach something like that.
You started in production, you go into visual effects producing. Have you ever been interested in anything else? Like, would you want to get into more of the technical side or go into special effects?
No, I feel like if I did something else, I would be interested in going back to production. Sometimes it's kind of a best of both worlds right now, because since we work show side, we get to, the supervisor is typically the one that goes on set. And when I was in production, my favorite part was going on set. But in this situation, I have on-set experience. And so, for example, on the show that I'm on now, 0 Day, he can't be two places at once. And so he would be covering, the bigger visual effects day. And if we had a second unit running at the same time that had visual effects that were needed, that we needed to have somebody on set for, I would cover that day. So, it's good because I still get a little bit of, that on-set work that I really enjoyed, being in production. But I feel like if I moved out of visual effects, I would want to go back to production in some sort of way.
And then do you have a favorite genre that you like working more?
I mean, I really enjoy the invisible, visual effects for sure, but I have done creature work in the past. That's what I did for Falling Skies. And it's been a while since I've done something like that. So, it's hard to say because, it's difficult for, fantasy, sci-fi. You're creating something based on someone else's thought and someone else's vision as far as a creature goes, or as far as an environment goes. But it has some liberties that can be taken because it doesn't exist, but it's fun in that aspect. And then, you have the invisible visual effects where you're really trying to make it so that the viewer doesn't know that that's actually not there when it was shot,
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of hard to choose. They're both exciting.
And finally, I was wondering, there's a lot of discussions of like having more diversity and like equality of genders and backgrounds on the production, like on set, behind the scenes and all that stuff. Have you seen a difference over the years, and you being the producer and the visual effects producer and being a woman and all that stuff, has it helped? Did you see like a difference over the years?
Yeah, I feel like at the beginning in visual effects, it was mainly men, some women. And since then, a lot of more women artists are around, a lot more women producers, coordinators, and, overall, in production too, in post, editors. On Gilded Age season 2, I think the majority of the team post and visual effects was women. And so it's kind of really nice to see a more diverse group come together from all angles too,
There's an argument that it helps with a set and telling the story. I think it definitely helps in the writer's room as an audience member when you see more diversity and then it portrays in the story. But I was curious, when you are on set and you have that, and you started, like you said, you were more around men and things like that. And now, for instance, the Gilded Age, there were a lot more women than before. Did you feel a difference where you were like, oh, this is nice, like teamwork? Or was it the same, which is also proof that it doesn't matter?
As far as the overall, like, difference in show, it's hard to say because like in the final product of the as far as the show goes, because every show's different. I feel like it can go any direction with any person, because everybody's personalities are different. So I don't feel like it's women versus men. I feel like if we all get along and we all are going after the same goal and on the we're all on the same team, then you're going to have a great product at the end of the day. I think that's the most important. It's really just about being inclusive and making sure that everybody has the same chance.
That's, I think, the important thing. And people are starting to realize that when the person has that passion and is a team player and has that great attitude and just wants to be there for the artwork and telling the story. And it's nice to see that. And then as the audience member, I think that they can enjoy the story better. So it's been nice to hear it from different departments when you're seeing the shift, especially those who've been working in their perspective concentration in media for longer periods of time. They're like, I am noticing a shift of being more conscious. And it's been nice. Or they're like, I really don't feel a difference because either way, we've always been professional and we're there because we love it. And I think that's a great feeling too. That's a great point too. Yeah.
I think this shift is definitely like just being, everybody being more self-aware of, and about the people around them and being courteous and respectful and, like you said, and getting the job done.
Well, is there anything that we haven't really touched on that you think is important to, any common misconceptions about visual effects? I know I kept messing it up and you're like, that's special effects, Tara.
Oh, no. I think a lot of confusion goes around, what does the visual effects producer do versus the visual effects supervisor? Just to explain that a bit more is that, the visual effects supervisor is more of the creative side and the producer is more of the logistical, budget manager type. But at the same time, our roles do cross over. We work very closely with each other as far as, with the budget. And then, at the same time, there are times where we'll get a shot back and my VFX supervisor will come and be like, can I get your eyes on this? So, I would say that it's like a 70-30. He's mainly creative. I'm mainly logistics, but then there's that 30% where we, kind of cross over each other. He'll speak to the budget if, somebody asks him something on set and, helps advise onto how much something will cost. But, overall, I'm, kind of managing that and managing the team and the vendors. And then, same thing goes for the creative. If I'm on set because he can't be two places at once, then I'm doing the creative. But, a lot of times I'm checking with him to make sure that that's what was discussed and stuff like that. So.
Got it. Well, thank you. Yeah, that's important to understand. And thank you so much for coming on. And
thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Media Maker Spotlight from Women in Film and Video. To learn more about WIF, visit F as in Frank, V as in Victor.org. This podcast is created by Sandra Abrams, Candace Block, Brandon Ferry, Tara Jabbari, and Jerry Reinhardt, and edited by Michelle Kim and Inez Perez, with audio production and mix by Steve Lack Audio. Subscribe to continue learning from more amazing media makers. Please visit MediaMakerSpotlight.com for more information.